Good morning, years 1 and 2. Welcome to our Key Stage 1 narrative. Today is Wednesday, the 17th of June. So we've worked really hard over the last week and a bit writing the story to accompany the animation of Piper. So today we're going to be continuing with our next chunk. So here are the chunks we've written so far, and as you can see, I've already ticked off the chunks we've written. So we've got plot points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Goodness gracious, we've done loads of writing so far. We've already ticked off those plot points, those chunks, okay? And so as you can imagine, we're going to be writing plot point 7 today, which is called Afraid No More. Okay, so that's this plot point just here. It's between 2 minutes and 11 seconds and 2:27. So if you want to go back and have a look at that now, that might be a good idea. It's just a short clip. That's this one just here, Afraid No More. Okay, let's have a look at our writing challenges for plot point 7, Afraid No More today. So we've got number 1, our first writing challenge is alliteration. So we're going to be trying to have a go at that today. I'll explain that in a moment. And number 2, our second writing challenge is a change of tone. So because in this section, in this chunk of the video, Piper goes from being quite worried and frantic and alone to feeling much better about himself. And so we want to convey that in our writing today. Okay, so on to this word alliteration just here. Do you know what that means? Okay, so it's when you've written a sentence and within your sentence you've got some words in there that begin with the same sound. Now often those words that begin with the same sound are together, okay? So for example, you might write about a horrible herd of hyenas. So they all begin with a sound, they all begin with the letter H, don't they? The sound horrible herd of hyenas. Can you hear the sound? Well done. Okay, so the reason I say they all begin with the same sound is because sometimes the letters are different. So for example, if I'm going to describe this just here, I've got a small circle, so I'm going to write the words here, small circle. Now can you see small circle? The sound is the same, but the letter that's making that sound is different. So they don't necessarily start with the same letter, but they do start with the same sound when you want to do some alliteration. And you could call that an alliterative phrase, okay? So the adjective to describe it is alliterative, okay? It's alliteration. A small circle. How could you describe Piper using alliteration? A brave bird. A brave bird. Would you describe him as a big bird? No, me neither. He's sort of, he's more of a chick, isn't he? So not necessarily a big bird. Can you think of another one? A brave bird. A bouncy bird, perhaps. He's quite bouncy sometimes, isn't he? Sort of bounces from sand dune to sand dune. Okay, so we'll come back to that a little bit later on, everybody. All right, let's get rid of our example just here. Okay, right, so let's just remind ourselves, pick up where we left off. So this was what Miss Lyons wrote with you yesterday. So this is the last sentence in our paragraph so far, so we've got to follow on from here. So you wrote something like, this is what Miss Lyons wrote, you've written something similar. He felt the water bubble around him, tickling his tummy. Excellent. Okay, so just to remind us, this is when Piper has basically discovered his new trick, hasn't he? So he is under the water. He's managed to pluck up the bravery, pluck up the courage to dig under the water, burrow under the sand, and get into this new trick that he... Okay, so he's realised that if he burrows under the sand, just like that little crab taught him to do, because he was watching him, wasn't he? He sort of taught him how to do it by looking at him. If he burrows under the sand, burrows under the pebbles, then when the wave comes over his head, he won't get swept away. And he also noticed something else, didn't he? He also noticed that when the wave goes over his head and when he opens his eyes underwater, he can see all those juicy and lovely things for him to eat. lots of those invertebrates, lots of those mini beasts and things that live in their shells underwater, the force of the wave sort of forces them all out of the sand, doesn't it? And he can go and pluck them up with his beak for a yummy breakfast. Okay, so this is quite a turning point in the story, everybody. This is where Piper's at now. You can see him here burrowing under the sand quite happily. Okay, so let's have a look, everybody. So we want to get started with this. Now, I've realised that it might be a good idea before we start to write just to think about the different things we want to include in this sentence. I'm not talking about our writing challenges, I'm talking about ideas. So like sort of plot points within the plot point that we want to do. So I've just put them on my post-it just here. Let's see if I can move it down here. Okay, so a few different things happen. So sorry if that's quite small, hopefully we can see it. So some things that happen. Number one, the first thing that happens, Piper realises he's learnt a new trick. So he realises, wow, if I burrow under the sand, then I'm using that word a lot, aren't I, burrow. If I burrow under the sand, then I can make sure I'm safe from the wave. Okay, the second thing that happens, he is happy, so he's really pleased about this. Now, I'm not going to use that word happy in my writing, but I do want to convey it. I do want the reader to know that he's feeling that way, but I'm not going to use such a boring word as happy. He runs through the other sandpipers. So do you remember that was the special word for those kind of birds? Piper is a sandpiper. So he runs through them, doesn't he? And they sort of scatter in all different directions. Oh, scatter, Miss Parsons, I love that word. I'm just going to jot that down here while we're sort of doing a bit of mind mapping or yeah, sharing our ideas, because I don't want to forget that for later. Scatter, that's nice. And also I've noticed the word scatter and sandpipers, they begin with the same sound, or that might help me hit my alliteration writing challenge a bit later on. Oh, Miss Parsons, it's all coming together. Excellent. Okay, so the last point within that is he repeats his trick and he shows his mum, doesn't he? So those are the sort of 4 things we really want to cover in our sentences today. That might not necessarily be 4 different sentences. We might hit a couple of those in one sentence. However, those are the things that we want to cover. We want to cover those plot points within this chunk, and these are the writing challenges that we want to hit. Okay, all right, so first one, Piper realised, so you might, like children, you might want to write down just these 4 bullet points for yourself, or maybe do a picture for each bullet point just to remind yourself, because otherwise we can get caught up in hitting the writing challenges and then the plot doesn't move on, and then you get to the end of your paragraph and you realise, oh, actually the story hasn't moved on at all, and we don't want that, do we? So yes, you might want to just write down these bullet points for yourself there. Okay, so Piper realises he's learnt a new trick. So let's have a think about that just here. Piper realises he's learnt a new trick. So let me have a think. So I'm going to have, so first, oh, that's quite large, Miss Parsons. So first of all, the wave, because he's underwater, isn't he? The wave is tickling his tummy, and then I'm going to have here the wave washed back into the vast ocean. Oh, lovely. I've used that word vast there as a synonym for big. So instead of saying the big ocean or the deep ocean, I've written vast, because I think that's a really good synonym for big. I think that really explains just how enormous it is. The wave washed back into the vast ocean. I was going to write here the glassy wave washed back into the vast ocean, because it's sort of transparent, isn't it? But then I was thinking that might be a bit confusing, the glassy wave, because glass is also quite hard. And is a wave hard? No, it's not really. So I'm going to get rid of that. The wave washed back into the vast ocean. Okay, I think we've probably got room for a short sentence here that tells the reader that Piper has learned a new trick and is quite surprised. So just to describe what I'm going to have Piper, and I'll go back in a moment and just check that I haven't used that sentence starter too many times. Piper sprung up, because he does, doesn't he? He sort of springs out of the sand. Piper sprung up. And I'm going to write here he had learned a new trick. How exciting! Because it is exciting, isn't it? He's learnt a new trick. Let's make sure we can see all of that text, Miss Parsons. The wave washed back into the vast ocean. Piper sprung up. He had learnt a new trick. How exciting! Excellent. Okay, so I have changed the tone slightly there with my how exciting. Okay, because previously he's not been feeling all that excited, has he? He's been feeling quite down in the dumps. So that's starting to change the tone of my writing there. Right, now it's time to hit that alliteration, everybody. So let's have a look back at our notes again. Piper realises he's learned a new trick. Tick, we can tick that one off. He is happy. We'll come back to that one in a moment. I reckon we could do some more on that. He runs through the other sandpipers. Okay, so we want to say he's running through the other sandpipers here. All right, so I'm going to have here Piper. I might change that in a moment. Piper ran through the other sandpipers. So he ran through them, didn't he? Okay, right, now I'm going to try and build my alliteration. So I could have Piper ran through. That's actually a bit boring. What could I have instead of ran? I could have maybe he ran through, he charged through, a bit like a battering ram, didn't he? Oh, I love that. He charged through. If you have a look at that video really carefully, he sort of charges through them, and they go all over the place, don't they? Because they're quite frightened of him going at that speed, quite recklessly. Piper charged through the other sandpipers. Oh, now I think there's some alliteration here. Piper charged through the other sandpipers. Oh, the other. Get rid of other. Piper charged through the surprised sandpipers. Can you see my alliteration there? Piper charged through the surprised sandpipers. Okay. Oh, wait a moment. I had that really good word up here, that verb scatter. I think I can use that as well to describe how my sandpipers move. Let me have a think. Piper charged through the surprised sandpipers and Piper charged through and the surprised sandpipers scattered. Now I don't like that, Miss Parsons. I'm going to change my sentence structure. I'm going to have my adjective, my alliteration at the beginning. Okay. Let's start with them. The surprised sandpipers scattered. Oh my days, everybody. 3 words that start with the same sound. I'm outdoing myself today. The surprised sandpipers scattered as Piper. Oh, this is lovely as well because my sentence starter is different than just Piper did this, Piper did that. So it's worked out quite nicely for me. The surprised sandpipers scattered as Piper charged through. Piper charged through them. I think there's room for some more for some more descriptive writing here. The surprised sandpipers scattered as Piper charged down the stony beach, the something beach. Let's have some more alliteration. Let's have the bronze beach. I can't really think of many words for beach that describe beach. What about, should we do sand again? Yes, let's do sand because then again it fits in with all this alliteration up here. Charged down the, or charged through the. And we could have stony sand. We could, sand. The stony sand, we could have the soft sand, we could have the shimmering sand. Up to you. Okay, I'm going to have stony sand there. Wow, let's just read that back. The surprised sandpiper. Oh, it's quite a bit of a tongue twister now I've included all that alliteration. The surprised sandpipers scattered as Piper charged through the stony sand. Whoa, fantastic. I think we can give that a great big tick. Well done. Excellent. Now, children, when you're doing your alliteration, you might choose a different sound. That would be fantastic. You could have, for example, something like Piper charged through the mingling mass. Are they a mingling mass? Because they're sort of all chatting to each other, and there's a great big herd of them, isn't there? The mingling mass of birds. You could have something about, oh, we often call birds like feathered friends, don't we? And they're a flock. We could have Piper ran through the flock of feathered friends. Oh, that's great alliteration, everybody. If you can think of a different word for ran that begins with a f, you can have he through the flock of feathered friends. Oh, goodness gracious, what a tongue twister. Excellent. Children, I reckon you will be able to think of some great alliteration there to make a fantastic alliterative sentence. I'm looking forward to seeing your ideas. All right, let's crack on, shall we? So with this change of tone, on to the next bit. So he's already run through them, and then what's my next thing that happens? He runs through, he repeats his trick and shows his mum. Okay, so let's have a think about how we're going to write that. Okay, so how am I going to change the tone there? I'm going to put something like chirping eagerly. Eagerly, excitedly. Chirping excitedly. Piper showed his mum. I'm not liking this so far, so we'll go back over it. Chirping excitedly, Piper showed his mum his new trick. Now we've got his and his there. We've also got a new trick down here and new trick up here. That's going to be dead boring. I don't really want to repeat that sort of phrase. Oh, I know. Let's have a different word for showed. Chirping excitedly, Piper demonstrated. You guys do that to me all the time, don't you? Demonstrate how you've learned things. Chirping excitedly, Piper demonstrated his new skill instead of trick. That's quite good. We'll think about new in a moment. Chirping excitedly, Piper demonstrated his new skill while his mum watched. And how did she watch? She watched carefully, she watched happily, she watched proudly. Chirping excitedly, Piper demonstrated his new skill while his mum watched proudly. That's lovely. I'm loving that so far. And we've changed the tone there with words like excitedly, proudly. He sprung up. Uh-oh. I've got exciting up here. Oh, good. I thought we might. Oh, yes, we have. Look, we've repeated that word. How exciting. And chirping excitedly. Oh, I'm glad I gave that a read over. That needs an edit, doesn't it? Let's have a think about that again. So we'll keep how exciting. Chirping. What did I say before? Eagerly. Let's have chirping eagerly. You don't want to repeat that word, that makes it boring for the reader, doesn't it? Chirping eagerly, Piper demonstrated his new skill while his mum watched proudly. Children, you're much better at me than this, so if you can think of a different word for new down here, that would be a really good idea, so don't repeat that one too. Excellent. Okay, let's give those a tick. Children, so excited to read your writing today. This one's a bit of a tricky one, so jolly well done if you've had a good go, and I look forward to reading your next paragraph. Okay, bye-bye for now, everybody.